Hello to everyone. My name is NC Lightworker and welcome to the Black Off Grid YouTube channel. I'm going to be sharing my journey towards a self-reliant lifestyle by building an off-grid homestead. Now mind you, I am not an expert by any means. Therefore, I do not respond to any questions, comments, or emails because as a lightworker, I am only here to present the information. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to post your location in the intro video to this channel because you may be able to link up with like-minded people in your area. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started. Well, hello again to everyone out there in YouTube land. It's good to be back. So for those of you that don't know, in 2018 I went on a one-year hiatus from the Black Off Grid YouTube channel, and now I am back. So you're probably wondering, so what the heck were you doing in 2018? Well, in 2018 I started the process of doing the research for my future homestead. However, I ran into a slight roadblock. I noticed that all the books about homesteading that are currently on the market were, of course, from people that have active homesteads, where they're showing you lovely pictures of their chicken eggs and all the cute little animals on their homestead. I really couldn't find a book that detailed the steps that someone would take in order to transition from working a 9-to-5 in the city to becoming a homesteader. Until now. Ladies and gentlemen, I proudly present to you the Homestead Research Guide, What You Need to Know Before Buying Land. Now there is a lot of research that goes into establishing a homestead, and this book is going to help simplify the process. The book is divided into two sections. The first section gives you the things that you will need to research and take into consideration, as well as the resources that are available for finding the information you need. The second section basically educates you about the land buying process, from contract to closing. Now I was trying to figure out how I was going to get the word out about the book, and then it dawned on me, duh, why don't you make a video about the book? Now this video, of course, is not all inclusive. Even if you decide to not buy the book, you're going to walk away with a clear understanding as to some of the things that you will need to research, as well as how to get started. I am a light worker, therefore it is my job to educate you, not entertain you. Okay folks, so we got a lot of ground to cover in this video, so go ahead and grab yourself a pen and a notepad and let's get started. In the video titled Homesteading 101, How to Get Started, I mentioned the importance of daydreaming about your future homestead, and this is exactly how the book begins. It starts with you developing an actual homestead plan, which involves putting your dream homestead in black and white. Before you purchase land, you will need to have a clear idea as to how you want your future homestead to look and function. For instance, the off-grid cabin that you're going to build, what will be the square footage and what building methods and materials will you use? Is your property going to be fenced in? What type of animals are you going to raise? Are you going to have a septic system installed or use a composting toilet system? What systems are you going to be utilizing in order to obtain water for the homestead? Before you start actively doing the research, my suggestion is that you narrow your search down to one county within the state that you will be homesteading in. Once you know how you want your homestead to look and function and where it's going to be located, now the real fun begins. Now it's time for you to do the research. Now, I am in North Carolina, therefore the book provides information that is specific to North Carolina. However, the book's content, as far as the things that you will need to research, applies across the board, regardless of state or region. The purpose of Section 1 of the book is to help you determine if your dream homestead can legally look and function the way you envision. For instance, the state of Florida has a law that regulates clotheslines. That's right, folks, clotheslines. Now, the likelihood of someone getting busted for an improperly installed clothesline is slim to none. However, the likelihood of someone getting busted for building an illegal structure is quite high. So when you do your research, you are basically going to be researching the things that will be both visible and obvious. In the book, I show you my actual homestead plan, and I show you all of the things I researched in order to determine how my homestead can legally look and function, which is outlined in Chapter 4. Now mind you folks, I cannot draw and I don't have any fancy computer software, so I did the best that I could with the illustrations in the book. So just kind of work with me on this one and use your imagination. So in the book, I show you how my dream homestead layout went from looking like this to this. I also show you how my dream tiny house floor plan, after researching building codes, went from looking like this to this. Remember, the purpose of Section 1 of the book is to help you determine if your dream homestead can legally look and function the way you envision. So the first thing you got to get your hands on is the law. The resources that you will first need to access are your state's general statutes and your state's constitution. The General Statute is a volume of several very thick books that contain the state's laws. Now, I am old school and I like to do research from actual books. You definitely want to check if your library has a copy of the General Statutes, which will include the state's constitution. Of course, you want to utilize the most recent edition available. If you are not familiar with looking up statutes, then start with the General Index because it lists information according to subject matter. It will be in alphabetical order and indicate which chapter or book within the General Statutes that you will need to navigate to in order to locate a particular law. If your library does not have a copy of the General Statutes, then guess what? It is time for you to go to law school. If you have a law school in your area that is connected to a publicly funded college or university, then as a taxpayer, you have the right to access their legal library. To all of the new school folks out there, you have the option of purchasing a LexisNexis account or accessing this information from your state's General Assembly website for free. FYI, the North Carolina General Assembly does not include the General Index on their website. Okay, so now you got these big old dusty law books in front of you, and you're probably wondering, where do I start? Well, this is actually a very easy question. The first thing that you want to research is, how does your state define what a homestead is? For example, one of the benefits of homesteading in the state of Florida is that they have two types of homestead exemptions. One pertains to taxes and the other pertains to debt. So we're briefly going to talk about the homestead exemption that pertains to debt. Under the Florida Constitution, your homestead is protected from certain types of creditors. They cannot evict you from your homestead, and they cannot legally force you to sell your homestead to satisfy an outstanding debt. So let's assume Jason, who is up to his ears in debt, decides to relocate to Florida from California. He purchases 2 acres of rural land that is technically under the city of Tampa's municipality. Unfortunately, Jason is not protected by the state's homestead exemption, and the reason why is location, location, location. The state of Florida Constitution defines a homestead as property that is owned by a natural person that, if located in the county, does not exceed 165 acres, or, if located in a municipality, does not exceed 1/2 acre. Jason's homestead property is too large to qualify for the exemption because it does not meet the state's definition of what a homestead is. Now you see the importance of doing the research before you make any moves. Texas, Kansas, South Dakota, and Iowa also offers similar homestead exemptions, so if your situation is like Jason's, then this is something that you definitely want to do further research on. The general statute includes laws that pertain to building. However, these laws are outlined in detail in a separate publication that is officially known as the State Building Code. Like most states, North Carolina building codes are based off of an international building code. Now, this is probably the only time when you do not utilize the most recent edition available, because as of 2018, North Carolina still functions according to the 2012 version. The North Carolina State Building Codes can be accessed from the North Carolina Department of Insurance website free of charge. Okay, so you have narrowed your search for homestead property down to one county. So let's talk about the role of the county. What most states do is that they give the county the responsibility of enforcing state building codes, as well as giving them the authority to add additional restrictions. Hence the creation of the county code. Your future homestead cabin or tiny house is required to be built according to both state and county building code. The building process occurs in phases, and each phase will be inspected by a county building inspector. If you will be homesteading in a very rural county, the county building codes may not be available online or at a library, which means that you will have to go directly to the source. I suggest that you probably want to be as discreet as possible, since technically the inspectors are the building popo. Now, this section of the video was kind of last minute. I was watching a video from a subscriber where she was voicing her concerns about tiny house ordinances in her city. According to my homestead plan, my tiny house is going to be built on a permanent foundation. In the book, I provide building codes for tiny houses that are going to be built on permanent foundations only. Now, the current trend is to build a tiny house on a travel trailer. So let me break down this whole tiny house thing as far as it relates to building code. Remember, the state of North Carolina building codes are based off of an international code. By definition, a tiny house is 400 square feet or smaller, and the building codes for tiny houses were implemented by the International Code Council in 2018. So basically, these tiny house building codes are brand spanking new. However, they do not specifically apply to tiny houses that are built on travel trailers. Okay, so tiny houses are really popular now. However, being able to build small is nothing new. As of 2018, in North Carolina, the smallest legal residential dwelling that you can build 120 square feet. So if you're looking to build a small house, you basically have to figure out how to fit everything that you would find in a regular house within such a small space, like a smoke detector and a fire sprinkler system, which is something that you won't find in a tiny house that is built on a travel trailer. Okay, so let's pull up my legal tiny house floor plan. As of 2018, according to current building code, a bathroom cannot be smaller than 70 square feet. Until North Carolina adopts the new tiny house building codes, I'm basically stuck with a bathroom that takes up a major portion of the floor space. Now, I honestly believe that tiny houses built on permanent foundations are going to be the new norm, not tiny houses built on travel trailers. The reason being is because the government functions off of tax dollars, so it will be very hard to tax someone that can simply just drive their house to another location. As usual, it takes time for the laws to catch up with the changing times. However, if you live in Maine, New Mexico, Oregon, Idaho, or Georgia, then lucky you! These states have already adopted the new tiny house building codes, and it looks like Texas may be the next state to get on board. Remember, the whole purpose of you doing the research is to determine if you can legally homestead the way that you want on your property. So basically, you're going to be researching the things that are going to be both visible and obvious. Do you need a permit to fence in your property? And if so, is there a height restriction? Is there a restriction for having a rooster, since their loud crowing may be deemed as a public nuisance? Is there a restriction that requires that you have a septic tank and to utilize public water system? If you purchase land within a neighborhood, does the HOA have a size restriction for building a residential structure? These issues and many others are addressed in Section 1 of the Homestead Research Guide, What You Need to Know Before Buying Land. At the end of Section 1, you will know, number 1, how your homestead can legally look and function. Number 2, how many acres you will need to purchase in order to establish a legal residential homestead, and you're going to be educated about land use restrictions. That's right, folks. Just because you purchase 2 acres of land does not mean that you can legally use the entire 2 acres. And number 3, last but not least, you're going to be educated about the importance of dirt. You're like, hold up, wait a minute, did you just say dirt? Yes, that's right, dirt. This is probably one of the most important things that is covered in Section 1 of the book, and let's discuss why this is so. Now, I hate to give you guys a spoiler alert, but if you're going to be building according to code, then more than likely you will need to install a septic system on your property. Now, a septic system has 2 main components, a tank and a leach field. The leach field is a series of perforated pipes. Used water from a toilet and kitchen sink is treated in the tank and then subsequently released underground in the leach field. Your soil or dirt has to be of a certain quality, of a certain content, to allow the wastewater to drain from the pipes. Traditionally, a percolation test, also known as a perk test, was used to determine the drainage property of soil. I have seen many vacant lots for sale to where one of their selling features was that the land quote-unquote perks. Well, perk tests have been outlawed in North Carolina since the late 1970s. A soil site evaluation is the current method that is used to determine the suitability of soil for a septic system. This evaluation is performed by county officials. The reason why dirt is so important is because in the state of North Carolina, according to General Statute 130A-338, you will not be able to build anything until a wastewater system has been installed first. In the Homestead Research Guide, I give you resources that you can use to get information about the content of your soil. This is something that you definitely need to know before you make an offer to purchase land. Unfortunately, building codes and other restrictions will make it difficult for your dream homestead to look and function the way that you envision. Chapter 4 of the book discusses some loopholes and alternatives that may be available to you. So that was an overview of Section 1 of the Homestead Research Guide, What You Need to Know Before Buying Land. Now we're going to jump into Section 2, which covers the land buying process from contract to closing. Now there is one major aspect about the land buying process that is not covered in the book, and this would be financing. The reason why is that banks typically do not provide financing for vacant land. Now mind you, this book is not a legal guide, nor was it written for the purpose of rendering legal advice. Remember, you will be the one that's going to be doing the research. The Homestead Research Guide was specifically written for the buyer that will not have a real estate agent representing them. They will basically be negotiating their own real estate contract. A well-drafted real estate contract will narrate the entire land buying process. In order to include the terms and conditions in your contract that serve to protect you as the buyer, it is imperative that you are knowledgeable about the land buying process. More than likely, the seller will be represented by a real estate agent. Chapter 5 of the book starts with describing the major players in real estate and the importance of the titles that they use. For instance, a seller's agent and a selling agent are not one and the same. Not all realtors are licensed real estate agents. The state of North Carolina only recognizes certain licensed real estate agents. Therefore, you will need to make sure that you are doing business with the right person. Of course, if you're going to be representing yourself, you will need to know the procedure a real estate agent is supposed to follow to make sure that everything is on the up and up. So let's assume you found a 2-acre property that is for sale in your desired area. Because you did the research, you know exactly how your future homestead can legally function. The asking price is within your budget. Do you contact the listing agent to make an offer? That's right, folks. You do not make an offer right away. One of the great things about vacant land is that it tends to stay on the market for several months, which allows you plenty of time to be able to do the necessary research. What you will need to do is to contact the listing agent and ask for the legal description of the land. Now remember, it is the listing agent's job to sell the property, and of course they're going to be thrilled that you are expressing interest. Don't fall for any of their tricks. Just get the legal description of the land and let them know that you'll be back in contact with them. When it comes to purchasing land, the most important concept is title. Title is the legal ownership of property. Once you have the legal description of the land, you will need to conduct a soft title search. To do this, contact the county register of deeds with the legal description, since this is how the property is listed according to county records. This will allow you to obtain the name of the person who is the current title holder. So now you know who holds the current title to the property. You contact the listing agent for the name of the seller and you request a copy of their listing agreement as confirmation. You immediately notice that the name of the title holder does not match the name of the person that is trying to sell the property. This is exactly why you do not initially make an offer without conducting a soft title search. Conducting a soft title search will prevent you from entering into a contract and, most importantly, paying someone who does not legally own the land. So what happened? Well, one possible answer could be is that this is a scam. Unfortunately, It is not uncommon for someone to try to sell something that they do not own. Another possible reason could be that this is a simple oversight. A lot of land in rural areas are owned by a handful of families that have owned the land for generations. Now, Thomas may have quote unquote owned the land for many years. However, Thomas never notified the county that he received the property from Uncle James. A change in title is not official until it is recorded by the County Register of Deeds. You contact the listing agent to let them know that this has to be corrected before you will proceed with purchasing the land. Another thing to consider is the use of an alias or a fictitious name. For example, Jim Bob Jones's legal name is Richard Jones. However, everyone in town knows him as Jim Bob Jones, and he even signs his name as Jim Bob Jones. Well, Jim Bob is now trying to sell land. You conduct a soft title search and guess what? The county shows the title holder is, well, Jim Bob Jones. Eventually, you are going to enter into a contract with Jim Bob Jones. A contract is a legal instrument. If any dispute arises, it will be handled in a court of law. Therefore, it would only make sense that you would use your legal name when conducting business. However, the use of an alias on a contract is not uncommon. One way to protect yourself as the buyer is that the contract can address both the seller's legal name and alias. Here's another thing to consider. The seller's name is Edward Little. The title holder's name is Edward Little. You're probably wondering, wait a minute, what's wrong with this one? Remember, rural land has been family owned for generations. However, you just paid $5,000 to Edward Little, who is technically Edward Little the First, the title holder's grandson. Now, for some strange reason, Edward Little's no longer returning any of your phone calls. In the contract, you can include the seller's date of birth and require that all signatures are notarized. Okay, so now you have clearly established that you will be doing business with the person that is the current title holder. The next step is to start contract negotiations. You will need to have a clear understanding of the terms or clauses to include in the contract that serve to protect you as the buyer. In the Homestead Research Guide, this is something that is discussed throughout Section 2 of the book. A contract is a legal instrument that outlines an agreement between the seller and the buyer. A real estate agent is not a lawyer, therefore they cannot give their clients any legal advice, nor can they draft a real estate contract? This is why most states use a standard fill-in-the-blank real estate contract. People, please listen up. Contracts are negotiable. Contracts are negotiable. Contracts are negotiable. This is exactly how lawsuits are created because people sign these vague contracts. It is not uncommon for the contract to not even address the very issue that created the legal dispute. You do not have to use a standard form. You can draft your own real estate contract. Chapter 7 of the Homestead Research Guide is dedicated to the real estate contract. Title is legal ownership of property. However, the deed is the legal instrument that transfers title from the seller to the buyer. So let's assume that you purchase 2 acres of land that is landlocked and require the use of an easement to access it. An easement is the legal right for someone else to access your property. The contract you signed addressed the easement, however, the deed did not. You completed the closing process and paid for the land in full. 2 months after taking possession of the property, the owner of the property that has the easement is refusing to let you on their property and is demanding monthly payments for the use of the driveway that you use to access your property. By the way, the easement property owner is not the same person that you purchased the land from. Will a judge automatically rule in your favor? The reason why is that the contract addressed the easement, but the deed did not. In the eyes of the law, a contract is dead after closing, meaning that the agreement outlined in the contract will not be taken into consideration if a lawsuit should arise after closing, unless you include a clause in the contract that indicates that the contract will survive closing. There are 2 types of deeds commonly used in real estate transactions, and let's discuss the difference between the 2. The major difference is that with a general warranty deed, the seller makes a set of promises or covenants to you, whereas no promises are made under a quick claim deed. As mentioned earlier, it is not uncommon for people to try to sell something that they do not own. One way an unscrupulous seller can do this is by issuing a quick claim deed. Technically, I can issue you a quick claim deed for the Statue of Liberty. Now, do I own the Statue of Liberty? Quick claim deeds are notorious for being risky, and since you decided to assume the risk, you will absolutely have no legal recourse against me. You will not be able to sue me. No judge will be willing to hear your case. Of course, the type of deed the seller is required to deliver can be stipulated in the contract. The deed that is recorded with the County Register of Deeds will need to be as thorough as your contract. Your state has general statutes that outlines the information your deed will need to include in order for it to be considered valid. Remember, land ownership is not official until the deed is recorded by the county. The deed is covered in Chapter 9 of the Homestead Research Guide, What You Need to Know Before Buying Land. Okay, so let's assume you purchased 10 acres of land from me for $140,000. The closing process was completed on June 15th, and you paid for the land in full. But somehow you got sidetracked and wasn't able to record your deed with the county until 2 weeks later. Like a sneaky snake, I sold the same piece of land to Robin on June 20th. Robin paid for the land in full and recorded the deed with the county the very next day. I boarded a plane for Jamaica with $280,000 in my pocket and was never heard from again. Legally, who is the rightful owner of the land? Well, the answer depends on location, location, location. Unfortunately, it is not uncommon for someone to sell the same piece of property to more than one buyer. This is why each state has enacted real estate recording statutes, and this is something that you definitely need to know before purchasing land. So while me and a cute cabana boy are sipping on pina coladas, you and Robin are duking it out before a judge. Using our scenario, let's determine who is the rightful owner. If the property is located in Florida, Robin is the rightful owner. If the property is located in New York State, Robin is the rightful owner. So let's change up the scenario a bit. Instead of Robin paying for the land in full, I accepted a $10,000 down payment and we agreed to monthly installments. The police are hot on my tail referencing some previous shady business dealings. I boarded a plane for Jamaica and was never heard from again. Since I went into hiding, Robin cannot make any future installment payments. If the property is located in North Carolina, Robin is the rightful owner, even though you paid for the land in full. The fact that Robin recorded her deed first is not the sole determining factor as to who wins. Other factors are taken into consideration when a judge renders a decision, and this is discussed in detail in the book. It also covers steps that you, as the buyer, can take to basically avoid this type of scenario. Just in case you are wondering which recording statute your state follows, here is the list that is included in the book. During the closing process, you will need to conduct a title search. So you're probably wondering, wait a minute, we just did that. Oh no, what you just did was a soft title search. Now it's time to do the real title search. When you conduct a complete title search, you have to confirm that the seller has a good title, which is also known as marketable title. Marketable title basically means that the land can be resold on the market to a reasonable buyer. For example, if I own a piece of property that contains landmines that cannot be removed, then my title is not marketable because no one in their right mind is going to buy the land. According to North Carolina law, marketable title requires a title search to be conducted for the previous 30 years. When you conduct a title search, you are looking for title defects. If a major title defect is discovered, then the seller's title is not marketable. In the book, I give you an example of how to do your very own title search. All this information is public record. You have the ability to do the same research that is performed by title search companies and by real estate attorneys. Let's assume that you purchased land from an estate. The seller, who was named next of kin, is selling her deceased Uncle Joey's property. Uncle Joey died without a will, but here's the kicker. Unbeknownst to his family, Uncle Joey had a few skeletons in his closet. 20 years ago, while stationed in Nevada, Uncle Joey was briefly married to a Vegas showgirl. The marriage was never legally dissolved. The Vegas showgirl just caught wind that Uncle Joey has kicked the bucket, and now she's coming to collect. Oh, and by the way, Uncle Joey has a 20-year-old son he never knew existed. This is an example of a title defect because state law may require that ownership of the land should have transferred to Uncle Joey's surviving spouse and his son, and not to his niece. Unfortunately, a judge may order you to forfeit the land. Purchasing title insurance would be in your favor because it will serve as a way to safeguard you from the numerous what-if scenarios that, no matter how much research you could have done, you would have never been able to discover a title defect such as this on your own. Title insurance is covered in Chapter 8 of the Homestead Research Guide. You know how they say, don't judge a book by its cover. The Homestead Research Guide, What You Need to Know Before Buying Land, is self-published, and basically there ain't nothing fancy about it. Also, the book is not cheap, so when you see the price, don't go falling out. Please keep in mind that number one, this is a paperback book, which means it is more expensive to produce. Number two, the price includes everything, taxes, shipping, the whole shebang. So all you pay is one price, and that's it. Number three, the proceeds from the book are going directly towards what I'm trying to do here on the Black Off Grid channel, which will allow me to be able to create more videos. Also, the book is only available in the lower 48. Now, I don't have any employees, so this is basically a one-woman show, so please allow 1 to 2 weeks for shipping. Now, when you get the book, you're probably going to think, there is no way all this information is in this skinny mini book this woman just sent me. The book is less than 80 pages. Remember, It was written for the person that does not have a lot of time available, and they are looking to establish a homestead as a way to escape the rat race and to get off the system. I give you the information, straight, no chaser. I tell you what you need to research and where you can get the information. The book is divided into 2 sections, and you're going to see how everything that you researched in section 1 is directly tied into the real estate contract, which is covered in section 2. Guess what, folks? We finally made it to the finish line. I know we covered a lot of information, and hopefully you found this video to be very helpful. I honestly cannot stress enough the importance of doing the research and educating yourself on the land buying process. Thank you for your support, and good luck to you on being able to purchase your very own piece of heaven on earth. The beautiful thing about consciousness is that it will never force itself on you. You always have the option of going back to sleep at any time. The choice is yours. If the information in this post was able to wake up a handful of people, then my mission was accomplished. It is now your responsibility to stay awake, prepare, and continue connecting those dots. Please feel free to share this post. God bless and take care.